Well, tonight is going to turn into some very unplanned shenanigans. Colin was going to put new brakes on the front of the good old beater daily, but everything is a little worse than he expected. So we're going to scrap this idea, throw it in the front yard, and pull his XT out of the garage and get that thing on the road tonight. Because it's been far too long. Too long. So, time for him to throw this thing back together and play musical cars. Yeah, they're pretty tiny.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we've really ever shown Colin's XT much. It's kind of just always sat in the background. But this is his, what is this, an 04?
04.
Yeah, 04 XT. Had a deer hit or whatever in the front, but overall this is a really solid car. Has some surface rust and whatnot underneath just because the thing has sat for so long. But
130K.
130K on her.
Mint interior.
Interior is definitely very minty. Overall, just a great little daily unit that just hasn't been dailied. So we are going to play around with it. We did sadly discover it has a fuel leak as we were pulling it down here. So we got to do brake lines and jerry rig a fuel line until we can get the right parts to do the fuel line properly. But see what we can get done tonight. Hopefully we get this thing on the road. Well, absolutely no clue at what point my phone died, but the XT is going home with Colin tonight. Pretty darn exciting. Got new brake lines running the rear through different calipers on it that are good, and repaired a fuel line. Colin is just finishing up throwing his other rims on it that hold air. Well, his other rims and tires that hold air. So that way you ain't gotta worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Only what? 4 hours?
Something like that.
Yeah. Not the worst, but not the best thing we've ever done.
A few minutes later.
Well, the first test drive did not go as planned. Parking brake exploded. Bolts were rubbing. Things happened. My phone's about to die. I'm gonna plug it in. We're gonna fix this, and I will explain further. Oh, the life of being a car guy, Colin.
It's so much fun.
Aren't you enjoying this?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I bet you are. So I never really made much of a recap on the XT where we left off with it. It was like 1 in the morning and we decided not to do anything with it. I told Colin to take the 4Runner and get the heck off my property. So we basically found out that night it's not a parking brake issue, it's a CV issue. I can pull this one out of place here by hand, and it's making obviously an awful clunking noise. So you can see it just spins freely in there. So I'm not sure if this is a axle issue or a diff issue. Well, there's no tire on that side because we thought it was this side. I thought the parking brake came apart because it was actually locking up slightly and binding weird. So a part of me thinks we have an issue with the diff, but I'm not going to know until we get an axle popped out of it. So I'm just going to start messing around, see what I can figure out on it today, and hopefully get this thing fixed so that I can have my 4Runner back. Because I would prefer to have my 4Runner back over this thing sitting in my driveway on jack stands. Well, for this one time I decided I'm not going to just tear the diff out. I'm going to just pull the axle, hoping it was just an axle. And you know, you'd end up with this monstrosity. And surprisingly, these bolts were not seized. Amazed me. Absolutely amazed me. But knuckles off, I got the axle out. And the axle's definitely bad. We are missing a snap ring. But that'll definitely lead you to wonder, where's the snap ring? So I looked inside the diff, and I don't know how well you can see in there, but that pin is supposed to be centered. And when I stuck my finger in there, there's a few things flopping around, and even the gear in there you can kind of tell is at an angle, maybe. It's going to be really hard to tell on camera, but I am sadly now pulling the diff. I luckily have a diff up in my shed, but it's not really how I wanted to spend my extra day off work, but oh well. We're going to get this Forester out of here. So sadly he got worst case scenario. He's going to get an axle and a diff. No fun, but we'll get her done. Well, just got our diff cover off, and I will give anybody just a second to figure out what happened in there. There's the rest of the hint. All the spider gears. The center spider gears exploded. I've never seen it. I don't know how that happened to this car. This car sat for like 2 or 3 years. Colin's hardly driven it since he got in it, but not what I expected to find at all. So I guess I'm gonna go up to the garage, find an axle and find a diff. And we're gonna replace it, but that's all carnage. Well, got ourselves a diff that is not exploded here. And I actually did just realize something. I think this axle is going to be fine. I realized the snap rings are actually internal to the diffs. I personally did not know that. So there's a good chance that this axle is perfectly fine. And that I won't have to give Colin shit for taking one out of my spare stash for the drift car. So yeah, gonna get this guy thrown back up in here. Or this guy throwing up in here. It wasn't in here before, so it can't go back. But gonna get her in here and hope that axle pops in and go from there. Hopefully get this thing out of here today and get my 4Runner back. Okay. The new used diff is in. The old CV does pop in and stay in, so that is good. Time to throw a knuckle on here and get the rest of this thing put together. So yeah, I won't bore anybody with that, so we're just gonna get this thing together. And it is all back together. Hopefully it's not gonna clunk on the next test drive, so let's get this thing back on the ground. Just like that, the XT is finally back on the ground. And we're gonna fire it up and go for a hopefully more successful test drive than the first few. That is the goal here, at least. Colin's too short for me. I gotta move this thing all the way back. There we go. This thing is a great unit though. 134,000 miles. Fires right up. Has a freaking beautiful interior. I give this car that. Heck yeah. Let's go for a rip. Well, he's on gaslight, but so far, no clunking. Oh, there we go. This thing's gonna be a good unit now. No clunking from the rear end. Other than it kind of smells like mice. Oh well, that's his fault though for letting it sit as long as it did. Cool. I am very, very happy with that. And she stops. That's what started this whole ordeal, was a set of brakes. And then you find out the diff is grenaded, and this and that, and more odds and ends. And, oh, the fun of being a car guy, so. I'm so happy. At least I'm very happy that Colin's gonna finally drive it. That's the main thing. It can sit on my property. I got enough shit sitting on my property, but this thing will at least be on the road finally where it kind of deserves to be, so. Heck yeah. It's going home. I hope everybody enjoyed this little side mission, so always more of these to come.